Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show.
Snowpiercer is a show on Netflix, but probably only by the barest definitions of that terminology. Let's get on with it, shall we? Episode 7, The Universe is Indifferent, starts out with Melanie in a pretty bad place. Even the engineers are getting concerned with everything that's going on with Layton escaping, so Mel needs some answers. And she gets on at the dock, and then the janitor, and then she starts on at Zara, and ends up threatening her baby's life. But meanwhile, Layton and Josie finish up all their smoochy cuddles, and then Josie gets back off to work, but before going back, she poisons an orange, and then gets that given to Miles so that he gets sent to the infirmary, because she wants to have a wee catch up with him, and it turns out he's still 100% tail, and totally down with the rebellion plans. Elsewhere, Ruth is having a day off, and Dalton, the big bruiser security guy, asks her on a date, but it turns out that's a ruse, because they really want to make sure that she's on board for when the first class try and take over the train and usurp Melanie. And Layton, on the other hand, is going down to meet up with Chips and Beans Katy Perry in the lounge, and then he has a whole bunch of powwows with various heads of groups and gangs in third to make sure that they're all on board with the Taily uprising, so we've got two uprisings happening at opposite ends of the train. As it turns out though, Zara dobbed in Josie, and she gets lifted from third, and Melanie ends up interrogating her, all alone. And in the end she ends up using the outside air to freeze off one of her fingers, which she doesn't really like doing, and it ends up making her ill. But luckily, Till intervenes, and she does Josie a favour, and then goes to tell Layton. And turns out that favour was to freeze Josie's wrist so she can snap her hand clean off and try to kill Melanie. And it's a frantic fight where the nozzle gets knocked out the wall, and Melanie manages to get out the room just in time before it freezes and kills Josie dead. And Layton is understandably kinda pissed off. So then he arranges to meet up with Crazy LJ and tells her the big secret of Mr. Wilford. So what did I think? Well, thank goodness this episode was a damn sight better than the utter slog of nothingness than it was last week's episode. And where last week was all convenience and things lining up for no good reason, this week was all about placing the chess pieces in the right place for the inevitable upcoming conflict. And I did actually quite like that Miles is still 100% a Taily, and they've made sure that he's part of the plan so he can do something they haven't actually made clear yet in the engineering section. I also liked that the janitor got pulled up by both sides, and he basically does a bit of a Benicio del Toro from The Last Jedi and tries to play both sides against the middle. And there was a kind of amusing irony to the idea of Layton using Crazy LJ as a pawn to spread the truth about Wilson around the train, considering everyone basically hates her. And there were some really good moments in this. Some solid bits of acting, like Mickey Sumner, who was actually in the Borgias, and I totally forgot about that, and who hasn't actually done that much this far on this season, but today she really got to act her wee heart out emoting, and it made Till feel like a real person, somebody we can empathise with, someone caught in with cross loyalties. And Jennifer Connelly, Academy Award winner Jennifer Connelly, who basically hasn't had a lot to do in this show other than stand and look terse, does a really good turn showing Melanie being forced into acts of brutality and how it affects her afterwards. It's really just a shame about the script because it really doesn't live up to the talent in the show. And as you know, it was nice to see Alison Wright getting a minute out of being basically a one-note background prop. Because, she's a good actress, she's been in loads of stuff, she was in The Americans and Sneaky Pete and things, but normally on this show she gets pretty much sod all to do. And before I go any further, I just want to apologise because my voice is killing me at the moment, but I'm going to soldier on. So this is Snowpiercer, and it's an improvement on last week, and that isn't saying an awful lot. This week they traded off having the action, aside from the one wee bit, for an awful lot of talking, and considering the dialogue in the show is really ropey as hell even at the best of times, that's not necessarily a great move. Especially some of the borderline soap opera level stuff this week. Not only with Melanie doing her rounds as this tough gal, but then an increasingly pat and cheesy bunch of scenes. We also had this moderately amusing, awkward meet cute between Dalton and Ruth. And for a minute I actually thought the show was going to be taking a few minutes to humanise two recurrent characters. But no, it was a lead into more basic plot stuff and a setup for a kind of dopey soap opera moment where Melanie is bit curt with Ruth, and because she's snappy like that, Ruth is suddenly all about the takeover, which she wasn't before. And the whole Josie the hero bit, with her meeting up with Miles, felt kind of unnecessary and pedantic, and it tried to make it into a "oh, will they get caught" moment, which I never thought they were going to get caught. And if nothing else, I suppose it does make it more surprising when she gets grabbed later on, and she's dead 10 minutes after that. Speaking of which, considering how much it hurt for her to get her finger froze, you're telling me that she managed to silently get her whole hand and wrist frozen at the point where she could actually just snap it clean off and use it to cold punch Melanie? That was a silly moment. It was a cute idea, but If it's that cold outside, the other problem is both of them would have been dead in seconds, and if not, they would have been suffering from like major skin damage within seconds as soon as that pipe had broken during the fight. But of course that's not the case, and all of this is just the show going out of its way to give itself one moment so that David can overact by, in this case, wailing in a hall of mirrors, which just looks so stupid. And apparently they've just been letting LJ the Willy Thief hang around randomly in the bar whenever she feels like it. I mean, this is the lassie that the whole of Third wants dead. She's just chilling out there and nobody seems to care. And I know that, the bar is supposed to be Switzerland. People are supposed to, take care of it there. And she seems to have some kind of, discount Witcher bodyguard in the background. But I kind of feel like somebody would probably just have poisoned her or stabbed her dead. And one of my main problems is the show is still completely facile and pretty dull. And the few scenes that actually started off seeming interesting, like Dalton asking Ruth to lunch, seemed surprising. And even though that I said that wasn't a terrible scene, the guy literally is grinning at her like a psychopathic ogre the whole way through, and it looks like he was going to eat her rather than the sushi. And I'm sorry, but the song at the end, the cover of Bad Religion, I mean, it was just naff, and it looked horrible. The actual way it was filmed was horrible. I'm not quibbling about the singing, because Lena Hall, who plays this kind of Dita Von train track club owner, she can actually sing. I mean, she is a Tony Award-winning Broadway singer who did, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and literally got the Tony Award for that. So massive props to her. But this was shot terribly, and it was mixed badly, and it looked like it was lit and coloured by somebody who was, drunk or maybe on drugs. I mean, just look at these shots. But now at least, there's only 3 episodes left, and that's a good sign, because it means that next week will be another episode of Setup, and presumably after that they'll do a 2-part finale, as they normally do on TV shows, and there will probably be a cliffhanger at the end of the second last episode. So there might be a little bit more doing and a little less talking, but at this point I'm not sure which is better and which is worse. So till next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions. And a special thanks to everybody listening, and especially my patrons, and most especially to Michelle Forbes and Judith Coloma, my top tier patrons. Thank you everybody. Everybody stay safe. Cheerio.